But the royals in Spain, France, and other areas, they learned how to let an unpopular minority do it, claiming it was okay under their religion. And this is in mainline history books. They would then have pogroms every 50, 100 years, it varied, and rob them of the wealth. And so they kind of just chose some of the Jewish moneylenders who would kind of run pawn shops. That's how it started. That's where the Rothschilds came from in Germany. And then they would set that up. Now, since then, the Rothschilds have married in with the royalty and, we're definitely up there at the top of the pyramid. But then you see them funding eugenics. You see them funding, and it's more than just funding both sides. I mean, why would Israel take 110,000 Sephardic Jewish children and kill many of them with radiation and maim others? And then you add all these other, and then you've got Kissinger. There's been other famous quotes, in the Israeli news where the light-skinned Israelis, make fun of the dark-skinned Israelis. I mean, they have a really racist name. It's the same name they use for black people here in this country, the racists use. And we see Kissinger saying, so what if they kill all the Jews in these are on tape, in Russia. It's just all part of this cold-bloodedness. And so that's why it's used as a political weapon, anti-Semitism, against those who aren't anti-Semitic. And then Jews who are on the grassroots aren't involved in any corruption or anything. It's basically a Jewish mafia who probably aren't even Jewish, just parading around using this as a weapon. And at the end of the day, they're just globalists who are into eugenics, like all these other elite groups. And once you realize that, it depoliticizes it, and you can see clearly what's happening. Bob Chapman, your comments on what I just said.
And it de-religiousizes it, if there's such a word, and that's very important. In Israel, and we have many people who are Jewish subscribers. There's a distinction, and there always has been, between the people who came from Europe and Eastern Europe, generally called the Ashkenazi, and the Sephardic Jews who are, we'll call them Mediterranean Jews, who are darker in complexion, and they're different, and they, in some parts, believe in Judaism in a different way, a slightly different way.
And they've done the DNA test. They've done the DNA test. They have a lot more of the original, Hebrew blood.
They probably have 98% more.
Yeah.
And then there was an Operation Moses that went on during the early 1980s, and they took the Falasha Jews from Ethiopia, and they brought them to Israel, and they're treated terribly. And so there is a social pecking order there. And you find that in most countries.
Yeah.
In Latin America, where I spent a lot of time in recent years, people who are lighter skinned and have hazel or blue eyes tend to like to marry with people who look the same, generally speaking. And so there is this difference in people in what they are and what they want to continue to be. And it is racism, there's no question.
And the point is, this is a human condition, and there's another level to it. That's why the federal government, and Castine admits this, funds all this infighting with each other, because, if people think it's the Catholics that run it, or it's the Jews, or it's the Masons, no, it's corrupt people at the top of all these organizations that have just become basically mafias, and they're feeding on the groups under them who think that they're there to protect them.
Well, there's a good example is the Balkanization of Eastern Europe, which started in the 1500s. And the reason that the British and others, Germans as well, would Balkanize countries, in other words, they'd take an area and where there were three different tribal groups, and they were very different, and they would make them into a country so that they could have war on demand. And how they did that was they'd have the guys on the right attack the guys on the left and finance both sides.
Stay there. Keep breaking that down on the other side. And now they've set that up in America. They claim multiculturalism is about getting along, but it's really all about being different and hating each other. We'll be right back.
We now take you live
to the Central Texas Command Center
in the heart of the resistance. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
That's what these governments, these mafias do. Whether it's Italian mafia, Jewish mafia, WASP mafia, and believe me, that's out there, Dixie mafia. They feed on their own people and then claim they're taking care of them. Here's an example. CNN. Feds nabbed $7.2 billion from Madoff victims. And now we're discovering, we already knew this from Bob Chapman, all these big banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you name it, involved with the Madoff scam. That's coming up and where the economy's going with Bob Chapman. Before I go any further with Bob Chapman, I want to tell you about some of the sponsors that have made today's radio show possible. One of them is Inner Food, Inner Health Botanicals. The website is innerfood, ENERfood.com. And they've got a bunch of different superfoods. Their classic Inner Food's got 20 superfoods in it. They have a ton of other herbal products that really work. You've heard, of course, the Health Ranger rave about them, and that's won their Best Superfood Award. Innerfood.com. They've got NutriCafe and fused with all these key ingredients that boost the immune system and physical stamina. They've got a bunch of specials as well, so check them out at innerfood.com or 866-762-9238, 866-762-9238. This is what I and my office use. Amazing stuff. Also, in closing, I want to tell you about Safe Castle. I'm proud to welcome this sponsor, a well-known company in the preparedness field, Safe Castle LLC. You can check them out at www.prepared.pro. That's P-R-E-P. That's Prepared.pro, prepared.pro. You can also get to their store from prisonplanet.com, where you can see their ad on the right-hand side of the page. These folks have been in the readiness business for 10 years. They're fond of saying that they're in the business of selling steel-plated peace of mind. They sell everything you need to be more ready for all the stuff that's coming down the pike, survival gear, supplies, even steel-plated underground shelters and safe rooms. Tell them I sent you. Again, that's prepared.pro for all your professional preparedness assistance. And then, of course, there's innerfood.com and prepared.pro, those two great sponsors. If you missed the URL, again, they're linked up on Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. Okay, we've got a lot to cover in a short time to get there. Madoff. Last weekend, as you know, his son hangs himself with a dog collar, if you believe that. Again, I got a bridge on Pluto I'm happy to sell you, but I want to get Bob's take on it. I don't want to prejudice his view. I want to get his real view, but that looks very suspicious. This looks like a message is being sent. Suddenly, oh, that $100 billion or so, we're actually finding a lot of it now. You know, big mega banks. And Bob Chapman has been dead on this first, telling us about Madoff years before it came down. The SEC knew all about it for 11 years, protected him. What's going on with the Madoff son dying, and now this money being discovered? Are some people sending messages?
I think they are, and I quite frankly, I don't know whether his son was murdered or not. Certainly, the circumstances were very strange. I think the medical examiner in New York could tell us more if they would, but you never know when you're going to get the true story. It's like when Nelson Rockefeller died, he had a heart attack, when in fact he didn't, because there was a gold badge detective who was at the scene of the crime, scene of the death, and he had been using what they call poppers, and it killed him. These are things that this is a chemical that causes an upward rush in your blood system, and people like to use those when they're doing things, which I won't get into. But anyway, we'll never know, I don't think. But it could go either way. I just don't know at this point. I've got a guy in New York who's really good, and he's reserving judgment. I'll perhaps know more later. And he's been very careful lately because I print what he tells me in the publication, and I think he's afraid someone might catch on to who he is. But the discovery of the money is very, very important. And by naming this Ponzi scheme, under the law, not only can they go back and get money from people who received a profit or received monies when nobody else did or very few did, and that is being applied to other cases now. And I came across one here just recently where letters are being sent by the receivers in the bankruptcy of this other Ponzi scheme. You invested $100,000, you got 103 back. You have to give us the 3 back because that has to go to the people who didn't get out like you did, and you were lucky they weren't, that sort of thing. And so that's going to be applied to future Ponzi schemes. I noticed today, too, Overstock, which has been chasing the naked shorts for years, have finally, I think they're going to file a RICO action against Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase for naked shorting of their stock and trying to destroy their company. So there's a lot of things going on there. Yes, this Madoff, but how about what the FBI is doing? They're going to subpoena 2,000 people. I mean, it's incredible, the crime that goes on. And, of course, I was on Wall Street for 28 years, and I saw it, but I didn't see anything like this. I mean, these people are brazen. They just don't care anymore.
Let's go over this Reuters article. Madoff insider, estate giving back $7.2 billion. The estate of Madoff insider Jeffrey Pickauer agreed to give back $7.2 billion to settle civil claims on Friday, significantly boosting the amount available to repay thousands of investors swindled in the epic fraud. So the sun dies, and now we start seeing big movement. Continuing with the economy in a moment, but what do you think of the El Paso Times reporting Mexican drone crashes in the backyard of El Paso home? We've seen all the video of Mexican helicopters flying deep inside the U.S. We know the Mexican military is dealing a lot of the drugs, committing assassinations on both sides. And can you imagine what would happen if a U.S. drone crashed on their side?
Well, I got to tell you something, Alex. I don't think much would happen because all the drones come from the United States, and they must give them to Mexico. And now we know that they have given them to Mexico. Yeah. And now we know that one went astray. So we know that for sure. Hopefully they are trying to catch the narcotraficantes who are doing all this bad stuff. And perhaps the people who are smuggling illegal aliens into the United States, as well as drugs. That land route is wide open, and you live in Texas, I don't have to tell you. And if Americans weren't using those drugs, there wouldn't be any market for them. And that's what the foreigners contend. And I think they got a good point. Let's stop using drugs, American, and we won't have to worry about all this.
Let's continue.
For years, the Mexicans have looked the other way. $30 billion a year going into the economy. It's a lot of money. It's number 2 after the petrochemical industry. And then the money's going back from legal and illegal aliens to Mexico is about $22-23 billion a year. And then you have the tourists. That's about $17 billion a year. So you can get an overview of why that's important to the Mexican economy.